Welcome to Nursing Research. I'm Dr. Bongiorno, and I'd like to welcome you to this course. We have a fast-paced 5 weeks here, and you're going to need to make a commitment to spend at least 3 hours a day on this course if you are to be successful. We have to get started right away with your part 1 of your research project, and we will be working on drafts of that from weeks 1 through 2, and then it will be due at the start of week 3, and then we'll immediately start the second half of your research project, which will then be due at week 5. In the meantime, you'll also be learning about key concepts in research throughout the course as you take quizzes and exams and apply some of the readings to the critical appraisals quizzes. We'll go through a sort of a walkthrough of the course momentarily. So next we're going to look at the resources that are available. We'll go over the assignment 2 at a later time. The resources here, there's some great ones about finding good articles, a guide to APA format, a writing help that's available at SUNY Plattsburgh, and how to format indents and headers. There's also a lot of tips about how to make a better research poster. That's a really nice YouTube video, as well as how to make a poster in Microsoft PowerPoint. That's again a YouTube video. And you can also Google Microsoft PowerPoint posters and get a template for that without problem. And then there's a variety of other sources for you to help with writing and exploring journals. The next piece is your Johns Hopkins Toolkit. This is an important piece to the course. Our School of Nursing, as well as the associated hospitals, have adopted the Johns Hopkins model for evidence-based practice as our formal model for practice. It's a really great model. It makes it very understandable, and as you can see in Module 1, it looks at internal and external factors as they relate to practice, research, and education, and in the end, how does that formulate into safe and quality care for our patients. So you will see underneath the toolkit that there is a template to develop your problem statement. We've already talked about that. There's a level and quality guide, so you will know, how do I decide what level of research I'm using and what is the quality of it. That's also gone over quite nicely in your beginning chapters of Hauser. There's a project management guide in there as well if you need to use that for your group process, if you're deciding on a group. And then the PET process is in here as well. And that PET process is something that you're going to go over in your very first discussion, which is how does a practice question relate to the evidence and then translate into practice. And there's some really nice steps here that you can see in this. The synthesis of evidence tool is also going to help you after you've gone through every single article and you've examined it for quality, for validity, for its application to practice. You're going to then look at the totality of it and think about, how do these individual appraisals help me to synthesize or come to some conclusions about the totality of evidence and the consistency of evidence, its applicability to practice, and for me to make some recommendations for evidence that would guide future practice. It's a really nice tool. Then you have your summary tool. We're going to use that in your second assignment, where you'll go through each of your articles and record the data that's requested on this evidence and summary tool. You also have a non-research appraisal tool here. We will not be using that for this term, but it's something good for you to know about if you are doing an evidence-based project at work. You'll also be gathering non-evidence-based, non-research appraisals, what we call the gray matter. And then there's a synthesis and recommendation tool in here, and I'm going to be asking you to use this as well in part 2 of your project, and we'll go over that in more detail when we go over part 2. But basically, all of these Johns Hopkins toolkit pieces will help you to develop a quality critical appraisal of the literature. So Module 1 is our next discussion. Welcome back. Let's go through the course. So you should open up your computer and have it open to nur327, Research in Nursing. You'll see my welcome message to you at the top of the page, and right below that you'll see the news forum. You need to click on that news forum every time that you come into the course, as well as what's below it, the question and answer board. So for two reasons. That is where I'm going to send you news, and it may be that somebody had a question about a research problem or about some other aspect of the course, and you have that same question. And with 20 students in 5 weeks, the most efficient way and the quickest way for me to get back to you is through the use of that Q&A forum. And again, the most efficient way for you to know about any new news or even just some cheering up, if you need it, is through the news forum. Underneath that, you will find the course schedule. Now, the course schedule will give you the basics of when things are due, and I've put in there a nice handy checklist for you so that if you can print this out, I know a lot of you don't like to print things, but if you do, then you will get a nice handy dandy checklist that you can then literally mark things off as you do them, or you could copy this Word document onto your own computer and do it that way as well. But it's important to put those dates in your calendar, as this is a 5-week course. There's very little wiggle room for any late assignments, and there's absolutely no wiggle room for any late discussion board assignments. So that's all covered pretty carefully in your syllabus. Below the schedule are the more extended module assignment directions. So you will want to, again, print this out and have it handy so that you know how to complete the discussion board in Module 1, for example, and any of the other activities. If there's additional materials that you need to have discussed with you before you do the assignment, you will find them in this document. Below that is the online discussion rubric, and that's self-explanatory. It tells you how I will assess your additions to the online discussion areas, and then below that is a faculty bio. And next we will discuss the research project. Okay, let's look at your research project. I have learned after many years of teaching the course in this 5-week format that we need to chunk assignments. What's that mean? It means rather than having you go out and figure out what kind of a topic you want, I've assigned you a topic. And so at the very top of that research project, if you click on it, you'll find a page where Group A is labeled, and they are going to do diversity awareness. Group B will do pre-hospital sepsis recognition. Group C, human trafficking. And Group D, elders and social visiting programs. So the 4 or 5 students assigned to each of those areas will do a couple of group things together and the rest of it individually. So the first research assignment is either an individual assignment or you can elect to choose within your group to work with 1 or 2 other people, but no more than 3 people to a group. If you do choose to work with a group, all group members will receive the same group grade. If there are any problems within the group, you need to sort them out, not me. And so therefore, if you get a group member that doesn't work really well on the project, they're still going to get the same grade as you, and there's going to be no intervention from me. There simply isn't the time or ability to do that. I guess you could choose to tell somebody in the group that they're no longer welcome, in which case they'd then have to go on and do their own individual project. But that's the sum total of my involvement. Secondly, at the end in Module 5, you will be sharing with the rest of the class a group poster assignment that the group has done together. And there are specific directions for that in the Assignment 2 direction file. So beyond that, you will be doing things individually. All the quizzes, all the exams, and all the critical appraisals are done on an individual basis. And those students that elect to do their major research project alone may do so. If you choose to have a group, I need to hear from you who that group is so that I can note that down and I know who's going to be doing it individually and who in a group. And you can put that right on the question and answer board. All right, next in your research project, we have a link to video conference calls. The dates are enclosed. You need to plan ahead. It's a Zoom conference link with a sign up. If you don't have Zoom, go ahead and sign up for it. It's a free account. And if you can't make the conference dates or times, then you will get a link to a recording once we've recorded and had those conference times. Just a note that the free Zoom account only allows for 40 minutes of group calls, so our conferences will start promptly on time and end promptly on time. If more information is needed after that, then we'll go forward from there. The next piece in there is your assignment 1 directions. So this assignment is going to help you to learn how to extract the best scientific evidence and integrate it with clinical experience for application to nursing care. The place we start with is developing a group, a like-minded group that will want to work on this same problem. Now, I have already done that for you. We have a group. So then where do we start from there? We have to identify a problem. So I gave you a group, for example, that are looking at sepsis. But sepsis before a patient is hospitalized, something that occurs in the nursing home environment. So that those individuals in that group, you can certainly talk amongst yourselves and share with one another, but each of you has to come up with your own individual identifiable research question. And in order to get that question, you're going to first need to search the literature. So almost the very first step after identifying the problem, i.e. sepsis in the nursing home, is to think about a search strategy. What are the keywords that I would use? And Hauser Chapter 5 will tell you how to do this. And then I will search the literature through the Plattsburgh's library sites, looking for primary research articles that had been written in the last 5 years. If you can't find more than that, any during the last 5 years, then go up to 6, 7, 8, and no longer than 10. You should be able to find articles within the last 10 years, no problem. From there, you examine the state of knowledge on your topic, and that's where you can develop a research question with one independent and one dependent variable. And what are independent and dependent variables? Again, I have a nice little link on the course website about the variables, but an independent variable doesn't change, it changes something. And the dependent variable is that which is changed or being manipulated. So an example of that would be, does a smoking prevention program impact initiation of smoking by teens? The independent variable is that education program. The dependent variable, the one that will be manipulated, we hope, is the teens that we are hoping will not smoke. So another example might be, what is the relationship between the moon and high tide? So the moon is the independent variable. It's there. It doesn't change except through the, if the moon gets whatever, it doesn't change. We always have a moon. Whether you can see it or not, or how much of it you can see, we have a moon. And the dependent variable is tides. So we want to know how the moon affects that. So after you've examined the knowledge about your topic and written your research question, you also need to have a problem statement. And that problem statement can come before or after your research question. So let's talk about the finer criteria as you're developing your research question. It means feasible, interesting, novel, ethical, and relevant. And so you want to make sure that your question gets to those the finer criteria. You can't have a research question that's unethical. For example, you couldn't trial something on a child that might harm them. And it has to be interesting and novel. It can't be something that's been done over and over and over. The PCAL is that you have a population. So if we took our smoking question that we just talked about, that population would be teens or teenagers. You have an intervention, an educational intervention, a comparison, no educational program, an outcome, a change in smoking status or intentions to smoke, and a time frame, which we didn't discuss, but let's say over 1 year. So when you're doing your research questions, make sure that they meet both of these criteria. And Peacoat and the Finer are both covered in your book, and there is also a link to the Psychology and Society regarding independent and dependent variables for you to look at when starting up your research question, getting that first draft done. Now, the problem statement is another place where you need to be interesting and novel. You need to tell a story about why do you need this research question. It tells us some background on the issue. It tells us what is out there in the literature in a very, just a very short statement about that, and tells us exactly why we need to do that. I've provided for you the checklists in Hauser for critically reading and evaluating your problem statement, as well as the Johns Hopkins problem statement template on the course. And you can use those two pieces to help you formulate a proper problem statement. And you can go over those with your peers, and hopefully things will look pretty well. I always like to have an introduction and a summary paragraph in any paper, whether it's the beginning part of the paper or whatever, because to me, you've got to open up the paper with a statement about what's the paper about, and you got to close it by saying, this is what we did. This is the writing across the curriculum course, so we need to make sure that you are doing a good job with both the actual content of the course, as well as American Psychological Association, APA criteria. And if you don't have that book, you need to get it, or at least use the OWL online, but that doesn't usually cover everything. And finally, we need to make sure that grammar and style, spelling, punctuation are all done correctly. And you can't expect either your peers or your faculty to go through and track change all of those mistakes. We might give a paragraph where we show you some of those mistakes, but I'm expecting as a college student that then you would carry that over. So this first assignment, you're going to have a draft due this coming Friday right away. And, it may not be completely done, but whatever you do, do it well, and then you can put in to be, to be continued type of thing. You'll get some feedback from your peers, and then you'll have next week to continue to work and refine this first section of the paper. And then in Module 3, it will be due. You can see that I'm also expecting a peer review, and I have given you a peer grading rubric. It's the same rubric which I will do to grade it, but I've also given you some questions to consider, prompts for looking at that person's work. And they're all right here, and I think they're pretty explanatory. And the way my grading works is you can get a 100 for your paper or project points, but then there are point deductions after that for APA, grammar, and style. And so you'll get an interim grade, and then below that you'll get a grade where points are taken off for those other things. Finally, the final draft of your start to the research project, so assignment A, should have a cover page done properly to APA. It should have all members of the team's names on it. It should have my name on it, as well as the institution's name on it, and all of the other criteria for APA. You should have an introduction, a search strategy, followed by a problem statement, a research question, your summary paragraph, that's just a few lines, what we did, of the references that you have used for this paper. Perhaps maybe in your problem statement you used a reference. And then your appendix for this should be the bibliography, or those 6 articles that you have found in your search strategy, if you've actually gone ahead and found them. And this is limited to 650 words. Okay. So you should be,